Hello, thank you, Jessa McKenzie, and welcome everyone to our Tech and Learning webinar. Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, which is about the maker movement and really empowering school communities through the next generation of the K12 Maker Movement. And a special thanks to our sponsor, Cricut, for making this time together possible for us. So today we're going to be talking with Vincent Young, who's the VP of Marketing at Cricut, about how the next generation of tools are really powering the K12 Maker Movement. And Vincent's going to be sharing some ways to identify and integrate some of the latest technologies to really drive meaningful improvements in learning outcomes, promoting greater student engagement, generally revolutionizing the culture of your entire school community. So I'm really excited. Before we get started, let's meet one another. So please put your in the Q&A chat there. Love to put your name and your school district and where you're joining us from today. We are really glad to have you with us today. Also, a reminder throughout the webinar, keep those questions coming using that Q&A. So Vincent and I are going to get to as many as possible after the conversation, and I'm sure there will be quite a few. So now let us get started. So Vincent, we have you kick us off and maybe walk us through a bit about Cricut and the changes you're seeing in the maker movement. So take it away.
Excellent. Thank you, Christine. I'd like to start off by saying thank you, not only to the team at Tech and Learning, but also to all the folks for joining us today. I know, being married to an educator, that late July is a time that is pretty precious because you are gearing up. You're either at the end of your summer or you're already on campus doing pre-planning. So thank you for taking the time to join us today. And I want to reiterate the other point that you made, which is for us, this is as much about sharing our vision of sort of the evolution of the K12 Maker Movement and what we're doing to shape it, as much as it is about making sure that we understand and have the ability to answer your questions. So please feel free. You're not just joined by me today. You're joined by other members of my team who can help us actually field questions. So please, I'll pause as we go throughout to answer questions. So I'm going to start by making an assumption. And the assumption that I'm going to make is that you joined this webinar because you have some level of familiarity already about what is Cricut. And so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on what is Cricut, but if you're not familiar with Cricut, I'll start with defining what Cricut is. So Cricut actually makes a portfolio of what we call smart cutting machines that works with a free, easy to use application and a very broad portfolio of materials and tools that basically allow you to design and personalize anything. When we think about that particular solution, it is pretty much one that was originally rooted in sort of the at-home hobbyist space. But maybe 10 years ago, educators were actually pretty smart. And they said, we could use Cricut for all the things that we're trying to actually advance at school. And so a lot of educators adopted Cricut. And so right now, about a fourth of US K-12 schools actually report that they have a Cricut somewhere on their campus, and about the same number, about a fourth of all US K-12 teachers say I have a Cricut at home. So it's a very popular product amongst not only the school community, but the educator community as a large. Cricut for Schools is a little bit more purpose-built. It is an initiative that we actually launched about a year ago, which is really designed to optimize how we speak about Cricut, support it with resources, and package it together so that we can actually position it as an entire platform that when used within your school or within your district can actually have a direct connection with inspiring learning, promoting creative expression, both in terms of the educators as well as the entire school community, and then can actually also be used ultimately by the people who support the school community, whether it's the administrators or even the parents. So we're not a niche technology. So we're pretty proud that we pretty much defined and developed this market that we call the smart cutting machine market. And so there's about 9 million people worldwide who use Cricut beyond the schools that I referenced before. And they use it a lot. And so if you're curious about technologies that can be used or adopted in a school, that you pretty much, if you bring it into a school, you have the ability to hit the ground running. This is one of them because we have those 9 million members make about 220 million projects every year. And so every day we have about 750,000 people coming into the software platform that we offer in order to make those projects. And then people who use Cricut and they make things with Cricut love to show off the things that they make with Cricut. And so if you took just in social media, if you took the top 5 hashtags, once someone has actually shown a project or a thing that they made with Cricut, and you just took the top 5 that have the word Cricut in the hashtag, that community of projects in social media is over 8.5 billion things that people love to show. And so it's a really not only a useful tool, but it's one that creates a certain level of community connectiveness, even at home, before we even talk about its relevance in schools. So I want to take a step. Well, I'm sorry. One other point is that we're pretty proud that this year, that large 9 million user community, we're going to grow even more. So this year, we actually expect to grow about 1 million more new users this year. So our community is large, but our community, we expect to continue to expand not only this year, but in the coming years. So I want to take a step back and I want to talk about sort of the K12 Maker Movement, our fit within it, and what we see as changing. So much like Cricut, the K12 Maker Movement is about 10 years old. And it really started when schools started thinking backwards. They started thinking about the type of product they needed to prepare to release into the world of university or into the labor force, and certain skills that they wanted to make sure were at a pretty high level of mastery, leaving the K-12 domain. And there was a desire to have a heightened level of design thinking, collaborative learning, fabricating skills, things that actually ultimately would be manifest in our career and technical education efforts. And that movement over the last 10 years has been underpinned by a variety of technologies, ranging from 3D printers to laser cutters to milling machines, and even metalworking technologies like angle grinders. Lots of technologies that have been brought into the school setting over the last 10 years. And I think by and large, the intent around those technologies has actually been very successful. The challenges we talk to educators about, to what extent are they pleased with the scaling and the adoption rates of those technologies, is there's been a feeling that many schools and districts have invested in some of that technology, and it's just simply not scaled throughout the entire school or district community at the rate at which they originally envisioned when the technology investments were made. And I think there's been 3 reasons for that. One is, despite the popularity of many of these technologies, cost is still a barrier, right? You're still talking about, we sort of view it as a $10,000 threshold. There's a technology that is under $10,000, and a lot of schools can afford it. But if it goes beyond that, it becomes very difficult to into the second one really has to do with relevance. And so when we think about the types, the range of things that can be fabricated within the current range of technologies, it's not relevant to 2 things. Number one, a full range of educators and students from K all the way through 12. And it's also not relevant across a full range of school subjects. And so a lot of the K-12 Maker Movement technology have been somewhat relegated into typically high school / upper school maker or engineering centric curriculums and maker spaces, STEM labs, et cetera. And so it hasn't been able to be scaled. And the third reason is probably the one that happens the most, which is a lot of times we tend to celebrate the technology and not what the technology can actually do. And so I think that's really the pivot point for Cricut as we think about what does the next movement of the K-12 Maker Movement look like. And it's really about bringing humanity into the next iteration of technology. So when we think about the next generation of the K-12 Maker Movement. For us, it's about building on the things that were great within the last 10 years iteration of the K-12 Maker Movement, which are really centered around the object, the fabrication of a thing. Building on that, but making it a little bit more human, right? Putting the person in personalization. And so in Cricut's view, the next generation of the K-12 Maker Movement basically harnesses human passion to do a few things. Number one, improve learning outcomes in the classroom. Number two, increase the rate of student engagement. Number three, really enrich the relationships that makes those learning outcomes and those school objectives happen. And we see that is really scalable, because at the end of the day, it's about human passion. And that is what the next generation of the K-12 Maker Movement unleashes and scales across the entire footprint of schools. So why personalization? What does personalization actually mean relative to fabrication in the school setting? Well, it's all about what do you convert. And so in technology rooted in personalization, it has the power to take a very unstimulating rectangular classroom, and it has the power to convert that space into an inspirational learning environment, both inspiring for the educator as well as the learners. It has the ability to take standard lesson materials and to turn them into not only the types of learning aids that promote student engagement in the lesson in the moment, but personalized learning aids obviously increase recall triggers during moments of assessment. It has the power to take ordinary school gear and to turn that ordinary school gear into a beacon for connecting the student to the extracurricular activity that he or she is connected with, or to heightening the sense of belonging that he or she has with being a member of the school community overall. In summary, it has the ability to turn everyday objects into prized possessions. And that's really what we think is at the core of the next maker movement. So let's double click a little bit on that. So when we think about the original last 10 years of the K-12 maker movement, as I mentioned before, it's really been centered around fabricating objects. And those objects have been really anchored around an engineering type of curriculum. It hasn't scaled because it has been, by and large, brought to life through a limited range of somewhat rigid materials, acrylics, metal, wood, things of that nature. The audience of people who've embraced it have primarily been the educators who are around the STEM functions. And if you think about it in terms of relevance and who within the school community could actually take advantage, there's not a lot of people in the school community who actually know how to operate a 3D printer or a laser cutter or the softwares that oftentimes are required in terms of being able to use those types of technology. When we think about the next generation of the maker movement, we think about building upon those sort of, we'll call them anchor benefits, but making should not just be limited to fabricating. It should be viewed as all those things that you can create within a school setting that are about customization and personalization. That can be applied to a much broader range of materials and ultimately projects. It's not just about the STEM educators. It's about giving access to that technology to the entire school community. We'll talk about what that means in a minute. I've talked about limited number of people who know how to use the types of high dollar technologies today. The next generation, pretty much anybody in the school community should be able to know seamlessly how to actually make using the next generation of technology. And it should be made by multiple people, often and accessible through multiple locations throughout the school community. Okay, any good technology in the K-12 environment, in order for it to be relevant and to actually advance the objectives of the school system, has to start with being relevant in the classroom every day. While it is admirable to create a dedicated space where making technology can be engaged with the purposes of fabrication. There's 4 million educators out there that are in the classroom every day that are actually doing some version of what making technology unleashes. They're just doing it without proper tools. So when we asked at the end of this last academic school year, Cricut actually partnered with We Are Teachers, and we got feedback from over 3,000 educators who told us on an everyday basis they're using some type of process to create labels and signs and things that actually keep students organized within their classroom, help students with classroom management, understand classroom procedures. They're using some type of process right now to actually convert their classroom into themed, sort of personalized, inspirational learning spaces that helps the students feel like this is not only a place that they want to learn, but they feel like it's a little bit of a home that they can connect with. They're using right now some type of a process that actually goes beyond sort of standard learning aids, but they're actually creating customized lesson themed aids to help reinforce learning concepts. The challenge is they're doing that on their own. They're doing that without thinking about the fact that there's already very commonly accessible and affordable making technology that they could have access to. So 82% of teachers, once they realize that a technology like a Cricut can actually help them with their everyday making objectives, they said, wow, we believe that 82% of teachers believe that every educator should actually have access to a technology like Cricut. So this is connecting the dots, if you will, between the type of making technology that might be available in a dedicated space and bringing it into the classroom every day. Beyond that, there are other members of the school community who also in the next generation of the maker movement can actually benefit tremendously from making technology. Beyond the K12 classroom teacher, if I, at your school, I'm the senior class sponsor, I'm the lacrosse team coach, I'm the band director, I am the chess club sponsor, I'm the Cub Scout pack leader, I want to be able to use and have access to this type of making technology on an everyday basis because I want to be able to support my organization and build a certain level of esprit de corps and pride in being a member of my organization. That actually helps improve student engagement, which ultimately helps people achieve more in school and actually helps reduce dropout rates as we get into upper grades. If I'm the person who's actually purchasing and using and adopting technology within a defined STEM lab or makerspace, I want to be able to expand the range of the types of projects that are able to be constructed or made within my space beyond just sort of a limited range of rigid materials. And as I mentioned before, if I support the school, if I'm actually supporting the school in the form of fundraising or other PTA or PTO support efforts, I would love the ability to actually harness technologies that are honestly anchored in making capabilities to actually support the school across. So this is about binding the entire school community, not just unleashing the types of technologies that can support the activities within a dedicated STEM lab. Okay, so beyond the K-12 classroom, let's actually think about other stakeholders. So I talked about those club sponsors and coaches. Making technology rooted in personalization should allow them to actually create the types of things, as I mentioned before, that promote not just the school, but the sense of belonging in the school. And that goes beyond just being able to say, I have access to technology that allows me to make things that promote belonging to the lacrosse team, but it also allows me to receive recognition that is deeply, deeply meaningful to me because it was actually made with a personalized message, tone, or something that connects me and the relationship that I have with the sponsor, coach, or my fellow teammates. It also allows me to actually showcase the types of themes that the students themselves designed to bind their participation in those particular activities. And to do that, they have to be able to not only design those things, to be able to apply them to the types of projects that go beyond that which sort of rigid, limited materials can afford. Within the makerspace, I talked about limited materials. When technologies that are of Maker Movement 2.0 are introduced, the range of materials not only increases, but the range of applications being able to be applied to more generally popular projects increases significantly. So technologies like a Cricut being introduced into that space instantly adds about 300 more materials that can be made with, and the types of projects expand significantly when we think about moving beyond rigid materials into a range of rigid materials, plus also popular things like t-shirts or tote bags or sweatshirts or tumblers or things like that that are really popular and have a high level of value because they're rooted in sort of human interactions and personalization. I mentioned before, the last audience is sort of the oftentimes behind the scene folks that like to sort of make the magic happen. And these are folks that want access at school to the types of technology that allows them to say thank you to faculty, thank you to administrators, thank you to donors, volunteers, alums, as well as being able to create objects of desire that actually could be able to not only support fundraising, but could also support CTE initiatives focused around entrepreneurship, or even things like DECA clubs, which I know that is a growing activity across upper schools. And so this idea of technology designed to unleash sort of human compassion and personalization, that is really what the next Maker Movement is all about. I talked about cost. We think about a Cricut machine versus some of the original technology that underpinned the last 10 years. And I'll sort of draw your eye to the bottom here. We're talking about something that is by and large 1/10 of the cost. So it is scalable throughout your entire school district, but it has about 200x the number of users and familiar software or platform when I talked about the size of the people who are already familiar with how to use Cricut. From a product perspective, most of you are probably familiar with the form factor right in the middle of this screen. So we have a traditional 13-inch cutting machine that is by and large making up most of that 9 million user group. I'll focus your attention a little bit to the left where you see Cricut Joy and Joy Extra. Educators help define that product. And so a lot of educators said, A, I need a product that's a little bit more portable or transportable than the traditional form factor. And B, in my school, in my classroom, I need access to that type of a tool, but I need the ability to lock it up in a drawer or a file cabinet. And so we created Cricut Joy and Cricut Joy Extra for that reason. To the left, about a year ago, we introduced Cricut Venture, which is our wide format cutting machine. It does not require educators to learn a new software, but it is 25 inches in width and cuts up to 75 feet in length. And that doesn't require an educator to learn a new software or to use any other materials. You can actually use the materials that you already have. But we also bring in a range of other products, particularly in our sort of specialized heat press market, where we have heat presses for fabrics, heat presses for mugs, and the ability to actually apply personalization, methods of personalization across a broad range of sizes when it comes to project making. The last thing I'll leave you with before I turn it over to Christine is we actually have what we call Cricut Design Space, which is, I mentioned before, a free platform for educators to actually use. It's not just software. It's actually what I think of as the love child between Pinterest and All Recipes. So it is the free software that you actually use to make projects that those 9 million people use, but it's also a place where you can go and find inspiration. You can actually borrow other projects that other educators are making. You can connect with people. You can bookmark projects. You can actually share your own projects. Within Cricut Design Space, there's now a dedicated discovery node called For Teachers. And if you go to For Teachers, you can find ready-to-make projects that are already curated in terms of for the classroom. There are learning aids. There are extracurricular activity type of projects. There are makerspace type projects. And so there's a full range. We know that educators hate blank sheets of paper. They're busy and they love harnessing best practices across the education domain, and so we've curated all of that for educators within Cricut Design Space. So our view of K12 Maker Movement 2.0 is that it's not about fabrication. It is about personalization. The benefits are within the classroom. We believe that that type of accessible technology rooted in personalization can have a positive impact on learning outcomes. Educators can use it to actually create the types of things in the classroom that actually improve classroom management and student engagement. We believe it's actually a much broader type of technology that can support a much broader range of CTE curricula, particularly around entrepreneurship. It's designed to strengthen personal relationships, and ultimately, we believe it can actually play a significant role in building stronger school communities. So with that being said, Christina, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. That was terrific. And I'm currently experiencing torrential downpour here, so fingers crossed I stay in focus here. Thank you for sharing that, Vince. That was super helpful. I wanted to dig in on maybe a couple different things and also encourage people, keep those questions coming. We've got some time. But you talked about including all the stakeholders. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the administrators and sort of their role in this process, please.
Yep. So it's funny. We attended as a company ISTE last month, and we had, of course, our booth, and then we had a private room in the back where we just actually wanted to have some throw the ball around time with administrators. And as we talked about our vision of Maker Movement 2.0, we had an opportunity to showcase a little bit around our products. One of the things that kept coming up that was of value to administrators really had to do with them thinking about educators, not in terms of their role in terms of teaching students, but in terms of them being employees. So this idea of pre-COVID, about 1 in 6 educators were considering leaving the profession. Post-COVID, that number went up to about 1 in 4. And so a lot of administrators actually have adopted this sort of culture of care, where they want to make sure that they're tending to the needs of educators, not just in the classroom, but their sort of well-being, their mental health, and they want to make sure that they bind the educators to the school and the school community through enriching relationships. And so one of the things that has been valued when administrators think about our vision of K12 Maker Movement 2.0 is the power that technologies like Cricut can have that actually can serve as a tool to promote this sort of broader culture of care. And so one of the things that we really encourage administrators to think about is, what role do technologies play, not only in terms of being able to sort of support stated curricular learning outcomes, but what role can technologies actually play in helping build and advance a culture of care? That's one of the main things that administrators have told us is very useful and interesting.
I love that culture of care. That's crucial. Thank you for sharing that. I was also curious if Cricut has any specific resources to kind of help provide some guidance on some of the specific ways that schools be using Cricut in their schools and classrooms.
Great question. Thank you for that one, because we get it a lot. So a few things. One I've already talked about, which is Cricut Design Space is ultimately the platform that we believe has now been built so that educators can have easy and frequent projects and inspiration. And there's information, I think, in the folder that webinar participants can actually download that talks a little bit about Cricut Design Space. In addition to that, I talked about the fact that one of the things that we're pretty proud of is that people who use Cricut, particularly educators, are very proud of showing other educators what they make with Cricut and how they actually are using it to not only turn their classroom into an inspirational learning space, but as the heightened view of that is to bind the school community. So they do that in very large and very active social media communities. And so there is a Cricut for Teachers dedicated Facebook group that has 100,000 plus educators who are very regular in not only sharing, but also if you are able to see inside that community right now, a lot of people asking, "Hey, I've got this door. How are you all, using Cricut to decorate your door? Hey, I've got this bulletin board. What's your theme for the year? Hey, I'm planning for this new club to get kicked off at the beginning of this academic year. How are you all using Cricut?" So this full range of intent around Maker Movement 2.0 within those Facebook groups. Educators are finding a lot of resource. And then the third one that I'll say is in October of last year, we launched an actual credential for educators called the Cricut Certified Educator Program.
That's
So
cool.
so thank you. Many educators use Cricut and they use it, to advance their purpose as an educator. And so our view is that's a skill, and that skill should be celebrated, and the education community should know that you have that skill and you use Cricut that way. So we created a program called the Cricut Certified Educator Program. Funny story, we thought when we were back in school that we would only get maybe, I don't know, maybe 500 applications to that particular credential before 2023 was over, and we got 1,500 within the first like day or two, and
Oh, great.
grew from there. So there is a credential program, and within that community, a lot of educators also are sharing best practices with one another. The only way, the only ask that we have for that particular program that keeps educators within that particular program is, one, they have to actually complete a certain range. I think it's maybe 12
Mhm.
very digestible on-demand videos, just to make sure that they've got their sort of Cricut chops up to par. But after that, it actually serves two purposes. One is it helps the educator put some of those skills in practice. But B, once every 12 months, an educator simply has to host or put together some type of project making activity
Mhm.
among the school or district community, whereby everyone comes together and they actually make. So it's really bringing this idea of Maker Movement 2.0, where it's centered around humans and relationships, and bringing the entire school community together. It's really sort of bringing that to life. So those are some of the resources available.
I love the collaboration, the sharing of the passion. I mean, that's really the best way to promote something, right? Just talk to your peers, see what they're doing. But the credential thing is great. I have one other question. We're going to open up to an audience Q&A. So you mentioned that many schools have invested in various types of making technology over the past decade. So what can schools learn from those investments to ensure that the next generation of maker tools get better traction within schools? Any advice around that?
So some of that I'll go over some of what I said again in the prepared comments. My first comment is obviously be mindful of costs, and I say cost because if I'm thinking on behalf of an entire school community, or definitely an entire school district that services zip codes that may service a variety of different sort of income settings, then if you go over the $10,000 threshold, it's going to be very difficult to scale that. So my first comment is learn from Maker Movement 1.0.
Mhm.
Below $10,000 tends to be a scalable point for making technology in schools. The second consideration I would say is any technology that only a handful of people within the school community are very familiar with how to use the technology. When I say people, I'm actually referring to the educators, not necessarily the students. Then it's going to be difficult to scale. Popularity matters. And so the ability to actually bring making technology into the school should be vetted by, and I'm not necessarily being wed to Cricut when I say this. I'm saying this across any technology. Any technology that you bring in that instantly that a large percentage of people already know how to use, you're going to get a huge ROI on that investment. My third one really has to do with, as I mentioned before, I call it relevance, which is learn from the original instance of the K12 Maker Movement. Any type of making technology that is awesome, but it is somewhat limited, in the range of materials that can be made with is by definition going to put a certain cap on the scalability of that utility of that particular technology across the entire range of subjects and range of grades. So that's sort of my first one. Then my last one, really, I would say across around any technology has to do with roles. So we think about it in terms of the three P's. There has to be identified, put a name to it. Who's your
Yeah.
promoter? Or let me back up. Who's your pioneer? Who's
Yeah.
your your promoter, and who's your person who's going to actually do your procurement? And I would argue your promoter is probably the most important one, which is within the school or the school district, identifying the person or the team who's actually going to evangelize the fact that that school has that technology and how it can actually be used is important. And so we didn't have that with Cricut with Maker Movement 1.0. We
Yeah.
didn't have it, and so it sort of left it upon most educators to themselves connect the dots.
Yep.
The next
Yeah.
generation of this, there needs to be active promotion,
Yeah.
on behalf of those who envision.
100%. And the identifying those pioneers who are willing to do the training, do the promotion, et cetera, that is fantastic. Well, thank you so much. I'd love now to open it up for some Q&A for our audience. We've got some time left here. So let me see what we got here. So this is a question. I've seen this come a lot. So most maker technology is located usually in kind of a centralized location. So it might be the media center, a dedicated making space, maker space. Does the location matter if the intent is really to provide regular access to the full school community? What are your thoughts on that?
Love that question, and the answer is yes. And I say that because if the intent, which we believe it should be, is to make making technology scalable and available across the entire school community, then I think once again that starts with the classroom. So any technology that can actually be put in the classroom to me is sort of number one location. That probably is in, is more anchored in, I'll use Cricut, the cutting machine itself. The
Okay.
challenge becomes when we talk about the other members of that school community, if I'm the coach, or if I'm the band director, or if I'm a club
Right.
sponsor, I don't want to go in Miss Christine's room and use her technology. So I need access not only to a different type of technology, but I need it accessible in faculty workroom, media center, maybe the
Right.
makerspace, the main office. So I probably need a different range of technology. So I need, we talked before about the range of heat presses, for example. I probably don't need a
Right.
heat press in the classroom, but I do
Yeah.
need one in a publicly accessible
Right. Right.
space. So from a Cricut perspective, in hearing a lot of that from educators, we've actually curated something that we refer to. Our vision is that you would have the Cricut campus, right? And so we've curated what we call the Cricut Campus Bundle, which
Mm.
is intended to think about not only what type of technology the building needs, but where it should be throughout that building. So it includes the wide format machine. It includes the Maker 3, which is our high-end traditional format product, but it's sort of in that package because we know it belongs in the makerspace. But it
Yeah.
also includes, a heat press that is safest anyway for schools. It includes a small number of cutting machines that actually can go in each classroom. And then it even includes something fun like a mug press. So we've thought about that. It gives the school and the administrator some uh, discretion in terms of thinking about where it goes, but it sort of curates it all into one solution. That's, we have a range of authorized resellers, but that one goes to market for under $5,000, so very affordable within
I love it.
a school or a district's budget.
You clearly listen to your customers, and that's fantastic. Let's see. Did we touch on the premium version of its software? This was a question that came in. The Cricut
Uh,
premium version.
yep. So that is one that we get a lot as we've sort of toured the country and attended mostly I mentioned ISTE, but also state level education technology conferences. And we, as I mentioned before, we had a chance to talk to a lot of administrators at ISTE. What I will say for those who may not understand the nature of the question is, I mentioned our main software comes with every one of our products is Cricut Design Space, and that is free for everyone. There are instances where we as a company pay ourselves for bespoke content. So if you go in, sometimes we may pay Warner Brothers for Harry Potter content, or Disney or Marvel, or we may commission artists to do high-end special fonts. Anything that we pay for, we then pass that along in the form of premium access called Cricut Access. That is if an individual wants to have annual access to that type of content, it is basically the equivalent of under $8 per month for an entire year. And so that a few comments on that one. We don't have a lot of educators said to us, I want that, and I want to be able to do that on a purchase order. And that is not a model that we actually have available. We are looking right now, and our intent is to be able to crack this code for those who are interested in it. But number one, Cricut's already in use, and as I mentioned before, about 1 out of every 4 schools. Number two, Design Spaces is free, and number three, we are evaluating we could actually make Cricut Access available to schools, primarily on on a model where it can be purchased on a purchase order.
Perfect. So this is kind of related. Just if a district's interested in purchasing Cricut, do you offer special pricing for schools? And then what about discounts for individual teachers?
Okay, so let me break that into two. Yes. So obviously there is, I mentioned before, Cricut's been around for, the better part of 10 years in its current form. And that product was originally a consumer product. And so we have distribution in your traditional Walmarts and Michaels and Amazons and Targets and places like that. But for schools and the education system, we wanted a few things. Number one, we want the ability to offer education. And number two, we know that oftentimes educators, when they bring technology into a school setting, oftentimes want extra things, development or curriculum or things of that nature. And so we've actually formed a network of authorized Cricut for Schools resellers who are trained on our products. They offer all of those value-added services specifically for schools that I mentioned before, for educated pricing. But the other thing that they do is they have defined, in partnership with us, about 22, maybe 23 bundle packages that takes the thinking out of the mix for educators who can look and see, yep, that's the type of solution I'm looking for. And it automatically sort of comes defined, kitted, and priced in a manner that works for education. Oh, the second part of the question, teachers. So yes, we do offer a teacher discount on 2 parts of our portfolio. We offer 2 of our hero machines, one smaller, one standard. And we offer a teacher discount. So if you go to cricut.com/teachers, that discount is available year round. And then the second thing that we offer year round is a standing evergreen discount on Cricut material. Through Cricut.com, but we do offer both education pricing for schools and districts, as well as discounts for individual teachers.
Excellent. Love it. Thank you. Thank you. So we have a couple more minutes. I'm just going to go through. I know our team in the back end, our friends at Cricut, have been answering some of these questions. Let's see. These are pretty specific. I think this one is talking about the spaces here. Have you thought about a more mobile environment? This is related to the question about kind of where to host the Cricuts, in the classroom, in the makerspace, in the media. Beth is asking, are you envisioning more of a mobile environment? Any thoughts on that, or maybe anything that's in the works?
So we get that in different forms. So I'm going to expand upon I'm going to make sure I cover the full range of what mobile might mean in the case of that question.
Yeah,
One is
yeah.
with an individual building, we get questions all the time about, does the model of carts work, where, individual educators can actually check out the cart and they can move around from room to room on an as needed basis. And the answer to that was yes. I actually think that's probably the majority of schools deploy that model today. And there are bespoke, we don't offer them, but there are bespoke carts that are created just for the Cricut machines. The only thing I would say in that model, if you're envisioning that model, is to make sure that you add some type of a one or two heat presses to that, because one of the most popular things that people want to be able to do with this next generation of baking technology, it does have to do with fabrics or things of that nature. So in a cart model, yes. The second one has to do with some school districts have a centralized makerspace location. And so it's, schools actually make it as a field trip, and they actually will go to the centralized location. And in that model, we actually think, one of the bundles that we've created that our authorized resellers offers is perfect for that type of environment. And then the last one is we've actually seen physically mobile, like trailers or vans, retrofit to be able to move making technology around from one school to another. Same thing in that environment. We would not recommend the larger wide format machine, but we would recommend, a mix of a standard 13-inch cutting machine coupled with the appropriate range of materials and heat.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. It looks like a lot of these questions are pretty specific to, but this one kind of caught my eye from Tim saying, so big fan, like everybody else here on this thread. He was looking for some projects of how he can use his Cricut tools to connect students to their community. So I'm kind of interested in that, because we talk about all the stakeholders within the school building, the school district. I don't know if maybe you have any favorite stories or anything to share about some examples of how students have actually connected with the community, the larger
Yeah.
community too. Yeah, go ahead.
So, Tim, thanks for that question. I'm going to actually share a personal story on this one. So, this is terrible, but it's the truth. So,
No,
my Christina talked earlier. My wife's an educator, and my kids actually went to the same school that my wife teaches at. And so, when I first started working at Cricut, I gave the school quite a few Cricuts, and so that included the heat presses and an interesting tradition form, which is they have a rival school, and depending on time of year, September, October, they have this big rivalry football game. And it's really cool because this organic event sort of happened where the teachers, the students, and even a lot of the alums sort of come together, and they actually designed the t-shirt for the big game that year. And they all kind of have like a making party. And so that's actually one that started, I thought was really great. And I think in my view, every school should replicate that, because it's just to stand back and watch that community binding effort is really center target for what K12 Maker Movement 2.0 should be about. The second thing I will say has to do with the range of educators that have talked to us about the fact that they either have a Cricut club at their school, they use Cricut in partnership with DECA, or they have a school store. And they actually, as part of either those programs or what is actually happening within the makerspace, they actually teach students the value of personalization, the financial value of personalization. And so there are moments where if I wanted to buy, a shirt from the campus store that said Christine Elementary, it's one price, but the ability to actually put the student's name on it, actually that increases the value of that product to the student or to the overall community. And so, schools have actually used Cricut and other types of personalization technology to connect what those students are making with their school community, as well as we've seen, as I mentioned before, Girl Scout T-shirts and things of that nature, where people are making their wares and personalizing them. So we've seen a full range of them. I will leave that with in Cricut design space under 4 teachers. There's thousands of pre-made projects that can start off as inspiration for anyone.
Excellent. This has been terrific, and I love the positive messaging and really using Cricut as a tool to kind of showcase your school's doing some really awesome stuff. So I really appreciate your time today.
My
Um,
pleasure.
and pardon me. And I'm really excited to follow your story. And I also should have mentioned at the top that Cricut just won our Best of ISTE with Tech and Learning. So congratulations. So that was vetted
Thank
by
you.
our judges. So that was terrific. This was a great conversation. And so thank you to Cricut for making it possible. And I know some are curious about our winner of the $250 Amazon gift card. So drum roll, please. The winner is Angie Juarez from California. So congratulations, Angie. Thank you again to Vincent. That was, again, I'm a big fan of Maker Movement, so I'm excited to see it just the next generation and follow their journey and their story. Thank you to Cricut for making today possible. And thanks to all of you for taking the time to share some questions with us. Have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you at the next Tech and Learning webinar. Take care, everyone.